was actually the question I wanted to ask you yesterday.
The rich young man?
What happened if you first didn't make it?
I'm sorry, what?
What happened if the first didn't make it all the way?
Oh,
Because yesterday you said man or woman have different difficulty on the path, and at a certain stage, a woman has this.
you know, I go back to the story I like to tell because it's a true story. And it's a difficult story to hear it, to think about it. And it also kind of tells how difficult it is to complete the journey. And what happens when you don't. You know, these ideas create desires. And these desires can have certain depths inside you. And the deeper they go inside you, the more difficult it is to get rid of them. You know, if they exist on the surface, maybe 2, 3 layers on the surface, then it's not going to be very difficult to get rid of them and they'll just disappear. If, on the other hand, they really have made a good and a big home inside you, you can get rid of some of the branches, but eventually they kind of come up and show their face again, you know. And so if the roots are really, really deep, you can categorize them as being traumatic. That all you can do is distract yourself for 5-10 minutes, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks before the trauma shows its face again. And once the trauma comes to the surface, your life will just basically be toppled. Everything will be turned upside down. So, I knew a friend who at the age of 11, something had happened to her, physically, sexually. And she was far too young to know what to do with this event. And she tried to share this news with her family, but it didn't work out too well for her. And so because she came from a culture where education, had great value, she eventually became a doctor. But from the age about 14 all the way till about maybe 35 or so when she finished, she had a string of relationships. Okay. At the age of 27, she assumed that if she was to get married, she'll be able to forget the event that took place at the age of 11 and all the other branches that were created by this trauma. So she got married and she tried her best, and she really, really did, but no success. Now, I have no doubt that from the age 11 she tried to kind of figure out what had happened to her, why it happened to her, and how she could overcome it. She could heal and fix herself. She tried and tried and tried and tried. And I think there came a point either she didn't have the proper tools or it just became far too painful where she backtracked and she just kind of distracted herself, She's now a doctor practicing. She's quite good. She's tried to make relationships work. She hasn't been able to. Maybe she will 10 years from now when she's, old and weak and fragile. I don't really know. if you are on this journey, but you're on this journey because your friends are on this journey and you just wanted to be around them. Well, your desire is on the surface. There'll come a point in your life where you become honest enough to say that I really don't want to do this. You just drop out. If it happened to be more deeply rooted, there comes a point, I suppose, where you stop. You'll go back into life and you just entertain yourself with various things. Once in a while, something about you gets triggered. Maybe you'll watch a movie. Maybe as you're walking, you'll see a book that says philosophy. I don't know, maybe I had a student at Casamas River College in 1999. His name was Mike Kidwell. And the reason I remember that name is because every time I'm driving from Oakland to Roseville, I think it's near Woodland, there is this huge sign that says Kidwell Road. And every time I see that sign, every time, it reminds me of my time at Casamnas and this kid named Mike. Every time. And so, my memories go back to Casamnas and my experience there, but only for a couple of seconds, and then I forget it. And so sometimes it happens like that you're, on this journey. For some strange reason, you drop out, you attend to your life, but it's not completely uprooted. So you see a sign in some shape or form. This sign goes inside you, finds the right button, pushes it, you're triggered. All of a sudden, you grow discontent for the life you have created. You begin to long for the life you could have had, the journey you could have been on. And as you're slowly being consumed by the memories of the past and the desires of the past, all of a sudden the phone rings and it's your husband or it's your child or maybe it's your mother, maybe it's your job. And then, you put, the things you were thinking about on pause and you go attend to, the issue at hand, and 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks pass by. That's how it is. Sometimes, you have had the capacity where the desire to understand lives really, really deep down inside you. It doesn't matter, it's like having cancer, where it doesn't matter what you do, you just can't forget it. It's impossible. You have to some extent, hand it to someone like Plato, that he really wanted to, even though Socrates was dead, he put Socrates' name everywhere in his writings, with the exception of, the last years of his life. Socrates for him was like a cancer that lived inside Plato. He couldn't get rid of it. Every thought was connected to Plato, to Socrates. Every emotion was connected. Every issue, social issue, political issue, spiritual issue, intellectual issue, was all connected to Socrates. If you have an idea like cancer living inside you, but you don't have the capacity to live with it, what you'll do is you'll try to forget it. You will get married, you will have children, you will attend to various branches of life. And this cancerous idea will show its face at least once, twice, 3 times a day, and will ruin you, will get you depressed, will get you angry, will get you question as to why you got married and had children. I don't think it happens very often, but it could potentially happen. But I think most often these questions don't really go that deep inside us. And in some ways I think if if I was to just talk about you specifically, I mean, you're still very young, you know. You still have the desire to have children. There is nothing wrong with any of this. Actually, it's great, you know, that you want to listen to the voice that lives inside you, and you have desire to be a mother, and I'm sure you'll be a great mother. And then there come a point where you say, okay, I want to bring or resurrect these ideas. I want to apply them to my life as I'm raising my child. I want my child to have these ideas inside them. So, you know, what remains true, Ginning, is that we have this great capacity to forget. It's just a matter of time. You know, we had Hussein's partner. They had gone to the same teacher when they were in Iran, but they took different paths. You know, Hussein was much more serious. He allowed these ideas to become like cancer, you know, and he couldn't escape them. And eventually his entire life revolved around them. Whereas the other fellow, you know, he works for the state of California, who's got 4 or 5 kids. He's a really, really nice man. But, you know, you're just busy with life. Initially, you're going to feel bad. Initially, you'll have lots of regrets. Initially, you'll be angry because you can't continue the journey. And you feel yourself to be incompetent. You feel as if you're shortchanging yourself, you're betraying yourself. And all of them may be true. But you ever see the movie Ginning is called Man Without a Face? It's played by Mel Gibson. It's a really, really good movie. He was a teacher, and he was a really good teacher. One of his students became really attached to him, and the student thought that, you know, Mel Gibson's character has the power to kind of heal him, fix him. So one day they're driving the car, or he's, you know, driving. It was rainy, and they get into an accident. The kid dies, and he suffers burn on one side of his face. And when you look at his face, you know, it's just like rubber. I suppose it's very unpleasant to look at. And you would maybe ask, well, how can someone who is so attractive, so good looking, how are they able to survive, you know, looking like this? One side being perfectly normal, the other side looking like that. How can they show their face in society, in public? How can anybody like them? How can anybody not be disgusted by the way they look? How could you look yourself in the mirror and be okay? And the truth is, after a while, you just get used to things, you know. And I suppose that's the answer, really, even if someone doesn't complete the journey. And I'm not quite sure if anybody does. First, I don't think the journey really has an ending to it. And second, I think because we have the component of greed inside us, you're always going to be left a little discontent. Yeah. I think you should listen to Tina Turner's song, What Has Love Got to Do with It? Eventually there comes a point where you just, don't want to be abused by the ideas anymore. And I like to take Hussein's approach, which is just live your life. It's okay.
Oh, so informative. The life is always there. If not marriage, there's like you said, full-time position. But there's always something. So I know you keep saying you cannot serve two masters, but it's not like we are going to a monastery, so I don't know where we're going.
When your relationship with these ideas becomes serious, where they occupy bigger and bigger spaces inside you, and they make you become somewhat judgmental about life and about the way life is usually lived. And you see that when you go outside and you walk the lake and you see people and what they talk about and how they dress and all that stuff. And naturally disgust, kind of comes up, and you won't tolerate anyone or anything. You will begin to lose abilities. We had someone that we had a Persian friend who used to come here, and once in a while she would email me saying, who's ever going to want me? I don't know how I'm going to tolerate any guy. I feel so empty. I feel so pathetic. I feel so this. I feel so that. And you try to kind of survive, but you can't. And it's really, really, really frightening. And so, as you find yourself becoming more involved and more serious with these ideas, you begin to also realize that you're becoming lopsided. You're more of this and less of that. And then when you become less of a social animal, your job suffers, your relationship with people suffer, and you feel lonely, you feel depressed, you feel angry, you feel incompetent. And so there is only one way to survive, which is, instead of moving towards this more, you lessen this and you move towards that. Initially it's going to be difficult, but people do it all the time. It really depends on when you lose certain sociabilities, and when you want to apply them only to realize you can't. How will they impact you? How angry do you become when you realize, you really can't joke with people. You really can't talk with people. And also perhaps as a woman, when you look at someone who has a boyfriend, how is that going to make you feel? Are you going to be jealous? Are you going to be envious? Are you going to be resentful? How long will those emotions stay with you? And how long will they entertain you? And to what extent will their poison spread in your system? None of us know. But it is a difficult place to be. Initially when I remember going to just friendly family gatherings, um, it's difficult because you're like 25, 30, maybe even 40, and there are like 50 people. I mean, people look at you and they want to figure out what the hell is wrong with you, so you try to go sit next to someone and start the conversation. And 2 seconds later you want to throw up because the conversation is just so distasteful. But you look at your mom, she's worried. You look at your dad, he's worried. You look at all these people and they're having a good time, so you start laughing. No one has told you a joke, but you just start laughing just to mix with the crowd. Now when there is a gathering, I just go sit and I don't really care. But it has taken about 20, 25, 30 years for me to get there. And that's really the answer, which is it just takes a long, long time. The other thing, Ginning, is it's such a huge gamble. All of life is, but especially these ideas, there is such a huge gamble. Let me give you a couple of examples. Okay, so you took a gamble and you didn't study business and you studied philosophy and humanities in hopes of finding a full-time position. So all the ideas and all the emotions related to these ideas that live inside you could ultimately come out in the classroom and be shared with students. What if you don't get a job? Was it really worth it? I mean, you're 20, sure, you can handle being in a one-bedroom. But you don't want to live in a one-bedroom when you're 45 or 50. You want your own house. You want a backyard. You want to plant some flowers or shrubs. There is another gamble. At the age of 20, you don't really need too many friends. You can just read books. You can go to coffee shops and write. Maybe you can just come to the house and have a chit-chat with your friends. When you're 40, 45, 50, is being alone really healthy for you? Can you endure it? Can you survive it? Is it worth the risk? And none of us know, to be honest. In regards to my shoulder, once in a while I just come to the conclusion that what I did was really, really dumb. It was really stupid to lift all the stuff all by myself. For what? And now I have to live with a shoulder that just doesn't work. Is it worth it? The answer is no. While you're doing it, you don't think about this stuff. And I think it's good to be around people who have have the wisdom of the Siddhartha. They also have the wisdom of the Buddha. They have access to both worlds. It doesn't mean they engage in both worlds, competently, but at least they know how they're made and how they work. If you like someone, be with them. You can have dinner with them. You can have conversations about, I don't know, whatever. And you can also pursue philosophy and this and that. When you get to be 50, well, this guy who's now perhaps, I don't know, categorized as a loser, you go to Kaiser together. Once in a while you go on trips together. Because you have changed, the relationship also begins to have a different meaning. I remember, you and I, as I was walking to the classroom, you were so happy because Dianza had given you a class. And so the first thing you said is that I want to quit Kaiser and just start teaching, focus on teaching, you know. And I remembered how difficult it is to be a part-time instructor because there are no guarantees. Your dean says you'll have 3 classes next semester. He calls you after like 2 weeks saying, I'm sorry, no classes for you. I just quit my job. What do you mean no classes? And you can't make him feel guilty. He really won't care. In fact, you'll just piss him off if you were to harass him like that. And it's not that I enjoy seeing you work at Kaiser in a cubicle punching in numbers. I mean, it's ridiculous. But I also know that life is a serious business, You can't survive on teaching a single class. You can't even survive on teaching 4 classes, 5 classes. Life is expensive, So, and it's a compromise you have to make. You have to feel good when you're teaching. You have to feel bad when you're working at Kaiser, and somehow you just have to make peace with the feeling bad with Kaiser. There is really no other way. Unless, like, Allison, like Cassie, like myself, you can work at a place for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years as a part-time, and then you have seniority. You can't get fired unless there is like a immense budget crisis. There is this story that comes from, I think, the Irish mythology. I forget the names, but it's about a father who refused to give his daughter away. All these young, attractive, rich men would come and say, I would like to marry your daughter. And no one was ever good enough for his daughter. So eventually his daughter got old and unattractive, and she blamed her father for the fact that her life had become what it had become. And the myth talk about being possessive. The myth talk about being jealous, being fearful of being left alone. Is it cold in this room? A little bit. This Greek poet Pindar, he had said that no one would ever marry if it wasn't their awareness of getting old, getting sick. unless you're courageous enough to say, when I get to be 40, I know at the age of 41 I'm going to become sick, and then I need to be dependent on other people. I'm just going to kill myself at the age of 40. Then you don't need to get married. Then you don't need to have children as an additional support system. There is nothing wrong with having a companion and enjoying, you know. There's nothing wrong with having a job that has nothing to do with philosophy. I mean, it's painful to kind of give up those things and pursue a path that has nothing to do. But what can you do? You know. You know, you have someone like Jordan Peterson, for example, who comes up and says all these things about, or anybody else, you know, with these lofty ideas. What tools you need to get married, to have a relationship. You know, it's going to take you a few lifetimes to become really good at mastering those tools. You know, by the time you begin to practice and learn the craft, you'll be like 50 or 60 or 70 if you're lucky. But who wants to be around you at the age of 70? You're ugly, you're smelly, you can't walk, you can't talk. Nobody. You know? I mean, just have some basic stuff. Go out there, find yourself a man or a woman, and just wing it until you get it. Just try to work things out. You know? I think it would be very cruel of Socrates, someone like Socrates, or someone like Jesus, to say, what benefit is there for you to get married and lose your soul, to have children, lose your soul, to work at Kaiser and lose your soul? You don't want to talk like a hippie. That's stupid. I mean, you know, you look at the world, it's a tough place. You know, if someone says, I'm lonely, you say, get a boyfriend, get a girlfriend. Someone says, I have no money, go get a job, it's okay. These ideas mean nothing. You know?
I don't remember clearly, but I thought yesterday, yeah, you also said something about, you know, if you have a piece of wisdom, whatever, then the physical world in relation to it become very different. So, something like that.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
I think maybe relate to Kevin's question, why not sit the kingdom cup first and then the rest could just...
Oh, yes, yes. First seek the kingdom of God and everything else shall be given to you.
Yeah.
You know, there's a young kid who plays the piano, Peter Buka. He's Hungarian. He's 21, 22, and he's a good-looking kid. And he plays the piano beautifully. His brother plays the violin, and his sister sings opera. She has a bad voice, but she tries. Um, from the age 3, um, and maybe he's gifted and talented, I don't know, but he was just given a piano and he played and played and played and played. And, he makes these YouTube clips and he has millions of followers and he makes tons of money every month through YouTube. He sought the kingdom of God and everything else was given to him. At the age of 2, he wasn't given a buffet of choices. He was only given one choice, which was the piano. And he became really good at playing the piano. And when you begin to have a love affair with wanting to learn and play the piano beautifully, proficiently, your desire for perhaps friendships go away, your desire for sex goes away, your desire for drinking and smoking go away, your desire for going to school and sitting in these ridiculous classes go away. Everything about life goes away except playing the piano. And then you become really, really good, that all of your efforts eventually pay off. They invite you to play at, concerts, at various venues. And now that he's become very proficient, in playing the piano, through piano, he makes money. Through piano, he gets fame and fortune. He gets men and women being attracted to him. And that's how it is, But the thing that you need to consider is that he was contaminated with playing the piano at the age of 2 or 3. And they forced him. They didn't give him any breaks. They didn't introduce any desire that would contradict or oppose this particular craft called playing the piano. Everything was in harmony with playing the piano. And his labor paid off at the age of 18 and a half, 19. That is what it means to first seek the kingdom of God. If you study philosophy from age 10 and you get your PhD by the time you're 24, then you get a full-time position at the age of 25. From 25, you have a steady salary. You have 3, 4, 5 classes every semester. You have hundreds of students who come and pay attention to you. You have power. You have stability. You get married, and your husband or your wife deal with you philosophically. You have children. You deal with them philosophically. That's how it is. Okay. If you're talking about someone like me at the age of 56, I come to you and you tell me, Amir, first seek the kingdom of God. Well, I have an entire life behind me, and you're asking me to throw all of that away, begin my desire to seek the kingdom of God. Even if I was, the memory of my life is going to haunt me. Leaving my wife and my kids and my job is going to make me feel guilty, ashamed. I'm going to get depressed. I'm not used to being lonely. I'm not used to being quiet all the time. I want people around me. I won't even do the seeking in a healthy way because of all these things haunting me, chasing me, harassing me. Look, the saying is made by Jesus. Okay. I don't know what kind of conversations he had with Joseph, his father, when he was 5 or 6 or 7 or 8. Maybe he was playing soccer. Maybe it was building cabinets, or maybe it was religious conversation. But what I do know is at the age of 12, at least, what the Gospels and other literature tell us, is that at the age of 12, he hasn't drank yet, he hasn't smoked yet, he hasn't had sex yet, he's not married or has any children, he's not committed to anything, he's a kid. Okay, he's taken to Jerusalem, and what does he say when he gets lost? You guys had no reason to worry for me. You could have found me in my father's house. This is where I belong. At the age of 12, he is single-minded. He is extremely focused. He only wants the kingdom of God. That is his piano, do you see? And what happens to him? He leaves for 18 years, focuses on his quest, and his effort pay off. What he sees, what he experiences, I don't know. But this man has some wisdom inside him, and that wisdom creates inside him Sabbath. That's his resting place. He doesn't go by the judgments of other people. He goes by the judgments created from within. He measures himself through himself, you know. And so, and what happens when you have wisdom? You're not going to read all these books in hopes of finding something that smells good. You look at a title, you say, no, I don't think it's going to work for me. You read a sentence, you realize, and all of a sudden you realize if Jesus was to come here, look at this, all these books that I have, he would have no problem dismissing all of them in about 5 minutes' time. Why would anyone collect books? You know, if wisdom lives inside you, why not just go there to that library? Why the hell do you need to read all of this stuff? And his statement is immensely cruel. You come to me as a married man. You know, I have children, I have a job, I have a mortgage, I have family to take care of, I have my parents who are old, my body is not very healthy. And all of a sudden you're telling me, make my life irrelevant and meaningless and pursue God? Who's going to take care of all this stuff? What am I going to do with guilt? So that statement, that specific statement, I think is really meant for a specific group of people, first who have nothing to lose, and if they do have things to lose, they don't really care. They have lost the capacity to care and to have shame and to have guilt. They can walk away from things freely. You know, Jesus is not going to just talk to any man or any woman. He's going to talk to people if they have a soul or a spirit inside them that need to come out. 8 billion people on this planet. Who is he going to talk to? Maybe 2. He's going to know if a date is going to work within 5 minutes' time. You know. He's not going to waste his time with making lots of money. He doesn't care about a house, a shelter, because he knows as a human being he's going to be homeless. You know, he'll be a Scrooge. He'll be very stingy with money because there is nothing worth buying. He's never ever going to go on vacation. There is nowhere worth seeing. There is so little about the physical world that will entertain Jesus. He's, in many ways, that wisdom that lived inside Jesus frees him from all the garbage that lives inside me, at least. You know. I don't know if it's the right thing to do for you to try to apply that saying to yourself. I don't think it's the right thing for me. You know, when I was younger, I would get into conversations with my father. I would tell him the same thing that you're telling me, that why not, you know, seek the kingdom of God first. What I hadn't known, I mean, didn't think about, my father was an immigrant. He came here at the age of 49, 50. He started washing cars. And he imposed that on my mom. She started washing cars. Immigrant, you don't speak English in America. How are you going to survive? Kingdom of God? What kingdom? You know?